We're back on the record this morning with State Senator Lydia Edwards.
A big relief for your district. We're talking about the Sumner Tunnel and for people outside of your district as well, if you go to the airport. Tomorrow morning, it reopens at 5 a.m. after a month-long closure for essential improvements. Meantime, work continues on the MBTA, where riders are still sort of waiting to see that things are going to improve. What is your confidence level in finally getting things fixed at the T?
At the T, listen, I think I was here before and I was asked what I gave Peter Eng, I think.
Filling.
Right.
Filling, sorry,
yeah.
filling.
That's okay.
What I gave him in terms of a grade, and I gave him an A-, and I would say I've upgraded that to a full-on A. I'm very proud of him. I've watched him move efficiently, and it's, you know, I want people to understand we're not saying that there won't be issues with one of the oldest transportation system in the country. What I see, though, is the ability to respond to those issues in an efficient time and when it's responded to the correct way and the final way.
But the Sumner Tunnel.
I
should mention that. I mean, that is something.
And we've moved along, right? I mean, listen, we were, at first we had 2 months planned for 2 years. It actually went down to just 1 month this year.
We're going to have weekend closures
and we
coming
will have
up.
some, but not as many as we did last time. And so I see a light at the end of the tunnel.
Oh, very well put. Very well put. All right, in the time we have left, let's shift the conversation to presidential politics. Democrats will rally around Kamala Harris as their presidential nominee. That process should be complete by Monday. So what do you make of the political whirlwind that has brought us to this point?
I'm beyond excited. You know, I make it as a historic big move. It's a historic moment that someone with so much power can say, I will not continue to seek it. I think that speaks to the character of President Biden in a way that, I don't know, it made me emotional because I don't know that very many or any politicians could do the same thing.
Former President Donald Trump actually questioned the vice president's racial identity during an appearance before black journalists last week in Chicago.
Did you see that?
I did. I saw it, and you know, all I can think of is thank you to the person on the Trump team that put the president in front of the National Association of Black Journalists. Continue to come back and continue to talk and continue to make that microphone as loud as possible. Every time he speaks about race, every time he speaks about gender, I believe he loses votes. I believe he loses confidence. I believe he divides us further. So honestly, it was insulting, but keep doing it. Keep going, Donald.
There is a point in time when, he showed up at the conference, but then he talked.
Yeah.
And that was the...
Yeah, no, he talked and talked and talked and further demonstrated his lack of comprehension. Millions, hundreds of millions of people are more than one racial group, and millions and hundreds of millions of people are in interracial relationships. And he just demonstrated he either has no respect for them, no concept of it. And
there are people, some of his supporters are saying, you know, he was treated unfairly. What do you make of that?
He chose to come. You came to a tough, hot interview. It's like me going on Fox News and saying they weren't nice. I mean, really, that's what he was trying to shore up votes with black voters. So he went to a hot seat of black journalists to have that interview and to expose his heart, his mind, and to really speak to himself. There was no counter opponent there. There was nobody there where he was bouncing off of. He could have just spoken honestly, clearly about what he felt about Black America, and boy, did he.
Senator, it's great to have you with us.
Thanks, Senator.
Great to have you in the chair. Our thanks again to Senator Lydia Edwards. The Sunday Roundtable is next. Republican Vice Presidential nominee J.D. Vance getting taken to the scratching post. How his cat lady comments are impacting the race. Stay with us.